Okay, this is the bank reconciliation problem. In this problem, you see that the bank balance, this is the balance that came on the statement that we received from the bank, was $112,675. This is the balance that's in our book. So in our cash balance right now, it is showing that the balance is $66,935. Now this additional information is going to be added and subtracted to these numbers to give us an adjusted balance that will equal. So your goal is to make sure that the book balance and the bank balance equal. So our first item is A, outstanding checks. So outstanding checks are checks that the bank doesn't know that we've written because they haven't cleared yet. They haven't been cashed. And so the checks that we've written this month totaled $41,840. So we're going to have to adjust the bank balance for these outstanding checks because we know that we have spent that additional money. Deposit in transit, that is a deposit made after the cutoff time for the bank. So if midnight is the cutoff time, we made the deposit sometime after midnight. And the deposit we made was $12,200. And this deposit is going to have to be added to the bank balance because they don't know that we've made this deposit when they prepared the statement. C, a check was for $760 was recorded as $7,600 on the books. And we wrote that check to the Ramirez Company. So what that means is when the accountant was recording this check in our books, he wrote the check as $7,600 instead of $760. So we're going to have to correct this. This is known as a book error. We wrote the check as $7,600, so we're going to have to add back the excess to the book balance, and I'll show you that in a moment. A check for $72.50 had been incorrectly charged by the bank as $27.50. So that means the bank looked at this, someone entering in the data, took the check of $72.50 and transposed the numbers and wrote $27.50. So we have to subtract an additional amount from the bank balance to reflect this error. Now the way we correct this is we call the bank and we let them know that they have incorrectly recorded this check on our account. The next item is an item in which the bank has collected $73.85 for us, and this is from a notes receivable. So the bank was the collector, and we don't know that they've collected it until they send us notification, and it included $385 of interest. So the note was for $7,000, and the $385 was the amount of interest we collected on the note. F is bank service charge. Bank service charge is what the bank charges us for allowing us to have our money in the account and taking care of our money. And then we have, last one is a check for $2,500 from the Howland Academy was returned with the statement indicating the company didn't have any money to back the check up. And that's referred to as non-sufficient funds, NSF. That's a non-sufficient fund check. So that's going to have to be subtracted from our book balance because we recorded it as income when in fact it did not materialize as cash for us. So the bank reconciliation, I'll illustrate it for you now. I'm going to record a book balance side and a bank balance side. And then I'm going to go up above and get the book balance was $66,935, and the bank balance was $112,675. And so I'm going to look at A, and A is outstanding checks. Outstanding checks are deducted from the bank balance. So I'm going to record A, and I'm going to deduct $41,840 from the bank side. And I'm going to pull out my trusty calculator, $112,675 minus $41,840, and that's going to give me a balance of $70,835. And the next item is the deposit in transit. So that also adjusts the bank balance. This is money that we've deposited into the bank, but the bank doesn't know about it when they prepared the statement. So B, I'm going to add 12,200. This was outstanding checks, and this was outstanding deposits. And I'm going to add that up, and so I'm going to get 53038. So that's our adjusted balance there. C, we received a 760 check as we recorded a 760 check as 7,600 on the books for payment to Ramirez Company. So we have to adjust that. So we take 7,600 and we subtract 760 from it, and 6840 we have to a check for 760 was recorded as 7,600, so we have to add back letter C. We have to add it was 6840 is the difference between 760 and 7,600, and this was a book error. So I'm going to add that to my balance, which is 66,935, and you're going to get 73,775. Now letter D, a check for $72.50 had been incorrectly charged by the bank as $27.50. So in this case, the bank made the mistake. So what I have to do is find the difference between $72.50 and $27.50, and that's $4,500. The bank charged only $27.50, so we have to subtract, this is letter D, an additional $4,500 from the account, and this is a bank error. And so we're going to subtract that from 83,035, and we're going to get a balance of 78,535. And then we're going to go to letter E. It says the bank collected $73.85 from a note for the company, and it included $385 of interest. So for letter E, I'm going to add that to the book because that is money the bank collected for us, and I'm going to add $73.85 to my balance. So I'm going to take 73,775 plus 73.85, and I'm going to get 81,160. And this was a note collected. All right, and then letter F, bank service charge. We are charged $125, so I'm going to subtract. This is bank service charge. So we have 81,035, and then we have letter G, and that was an NSF check for $2,500. So the NSF check we have to subtract, and that's called an NSF check, non-sufficient fund, and that equals 78,535. So as you can see now, the accounts are balanced so that the book balance and the bank balance both equal 78,535. So this is the adjusted cash balance. Now, everything that we recorded on the book side, we have to make an adjusting entry for because we have to update our cash account. So we have to do a journal entry. So what I'm going to do is shift this up and make the journal entries. So the first one was for the error. And then we can do this as one error or one adjustment or more than one. But I'm going to do it with just two adjustments, one for the negatives and one for the positives. So this one and this one up increased cash. So I'm going to debit cash, and I'm going to have to add those two numbers up. And so let's see, we want 6840 plus 7385. And so cash is going up by 14,225. And now we have a book error. And the book error, if you remember, related to letter C. And it says that we recorded a 760 check as 7,600 on our books. So we have to adjust that. That was a payment to Ramirez Company. So what we have to do then is we have to debit cash, and then we have to credit the accounts payable for the 6840. And that was for Ramirez. You can put the name of the company there if you want to. And then we have to record the collection for the note. So we have the notes receivable that we had on our books. It's going down by $7,000 because it told us $385 was interest. And then we want to record the interest revenue, $385. So I made one entry with this. You could make additional entries if you want. You could debit cash, or you could debit cash for $68.40 and credit accounts payable, Ramirez, for $68.40. And then that would be number one. And then number two, you would debit cash for $73.85. You would credit notes receivable. And the notes receivable was for $7,000. And the interest revenue was for $385. So you can do it one entry, two entries. You have to follow the format on the problems and exercises you'll be doing. So if they have it so that you have to do separate entries, then do it separately. If they have it set up so you do just one, then you would do it this way. And then the next one we want to do is record the negative amounts. And so the negative amounts are bank service charge and NSF check. So what we're going to do is we're going to debit bank service charge, expense, or sometimes the company will use miscellaneous expense. So you can use either one of these, and that is for $125. And then we had an NSF from one of our customers, so that would be accounts receivable, because we indicated that the account had been collected, and that was from Hallen Academy, and that was for $2,500. And then we would credit cash for $26.25. So sometimes the bank service charge will not be listed separately. It will be included in miscellaneous expense, so you just put it in there. And you're crediting the cash amount for the two negatives. So we have adjusted our cash, so now that our cash on our books is going to be $78,535. And as I mentioned before, if you find a bank error, the only way you can correct that is to call the bank and let them know that they've made an error. Because of course you can't get to their books, so you just call them and let them know that they've made an error. So hopefully this helps you with bank reconciliation.